Brilliant. Good morning, everyone. So welcome to the ArcGIS Update Winter 2024 webinar. This is our last webinar of the year, and we've got quite a bit to showcase today with the latest updates that have come to the ArcGIS system in the last few months. But before anything else, as you might be able to see, we've got quite a few different presenters on the call today. So I'd like to firstly introduce everyone. So I'll kick off. I'm Claudia Hodgson. I'm a GIS consultant in the product communications team. And you may know I'm not the normal host for this webinar series. Normally we have Alicia Vaz, but she's already off enjoying her holidays. So I'm filling in for this month, but she'll be back for next year's series. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Claudia. Good morning, everybody. My name's Mark Wells. I'm the CTO here at Esri UK. It's great to see so many of you join the call today.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben. I'm a GIS consultant in the product comms team here at Esri UK.
Morning everyone, I'm Madeline Alston. I'm a product engineer within the ArcGIS localization team.
Morning all, my name is Amy Palmer. I'm an enterprise services consultant here at Esri UK in our professional services team as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Sasha and I also work as a GIS consultant in the product communications team.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. So we are going to turn our cameras back off just because we realise it takes up quite a bit of the screen space on your screen. So we want to make sure that you can see the demos nice and big. So we'll turn the cameras off now. Before we go into the kind of bulk of the webinar, firstly, just as always, want to cover some housekeeping. So firstly, this webinar is being recorded and you'll get the link to it in the follow-up email. As well as that, you'll also get a list of useful resources relating to all of the topics that we're going to show today. So definitely worth having a look at those, as well as we're also sharing the slides that we're taking you through today. So feel free to circulate those and the recording with your colleagues afterwards if you want to. As I did mention, for those who joined early, we do have a Slido session, as you can see the details for joining there. Now, we're not going to be running a live Q&A at the end, but we will be taking the most upvoted questions and we'll be answering them and putting them in the follow-up email as well. So there'll be a lot of content in there for you to have a look through in that follow-up email. Also on Slido, towards the end of the webinar, we'll be taking some polls. Now, this is for capturing feedback on how you find the webinars that we give to you monthly. And we'd really love for you to fill out, if you do have time, to fill out the details of these polls, because we really take that feedback to understand kind of what's working and also what topics you'd like to see on future webinars. So they'll become available towards the end of the webinar. So if you do have time, please do take a look at those. Now, as I said, it is quite a jam-packed agenda. So we're going to kick off with some headline news by myself looking at some of the kind of key updates to the ArcGIS system, which aren't going to be featured in the rest of the webinar, but are certainly worth mentioning. We're then going to hear from Mark, our Chief Technology Officer, on an update on kind of where the focus have been with our technology this year and a look ahead to 2025. We're then moving on to some of the kind of big updates we've seen in the recent months. So what's new in ArcGIS Pro 3.4, some of the latest additions to come to the Living Atlas. We'll then be introducing some of the latest capabilities in Enterprise 11.4, before finishing with what's new in ArcGIS Online. So we're first going to kick off, as I said, with some headline news. And there's been quite a large number of updates to our ArcGIS Maps SDKs. Now, if you're not a developer, you may be thinking at this point, okay, this isn't as relevant for me, I'll wait for the next section. But I'm not a developer either, and I'd really recommend having a look at the updates that come into these map SDKs, because they're often a little bit of a look into the future of some of the capabilities that may then be coming into the ArcGIS web applications. And so firstly, having a look at ArcGIS Map SDK for JavaScript 4.31. Just a couple of the things that's seen is the ability with symbol animations now, you can see on the left-hand side there, as well as the ability to cluster lines and polygons. So this is obviously something that we've been able to do with point features for a while now, but excitingly is now available with point and line features, line and polygon features, making it far easier to kind of work with multi-scale dynamic maps that contain kind of a large amount of those features. Now, as I said, these are just some of the updates to this 4.31 update. I've added the link there to the What's New resource, which you'll be able to have a look at in the follow-up email. ArcGIS Maps SDK for native apps has also been updated. Now, this is primarily with a large focus on improving the editing experience, such as the new snapping capabilities, as well as support for reading barcodes as well. Also previously in beta, there is a brand new SDK released in recent weeks, and that is the ArcGIS Maps SDK for Flutter. Now, this is a new option for creating apps which works across Android and iOS platforms. So it essentially means you can create the code once, but you can deploy it across multiple different platforms. Another map SDK, this time for game engines, the 1.7 release, and this is for both Unreal Engine and Unity. And included in this update is the new draw status changed event on the ArcGIS view. So this lets you essentially track the drawing status of a view. And you'll see in the graphic I've got on the left-hand side there, that kind of loading indicator on the bottom right-hand side. So that's what that update entails. Towards the right-hand side, the update also brings the new attribution text property on the ArcGIS view. So this combines the attribution text for the layer displayed within the map view, as well as that copyright details as well. And then as well as this, and to be honest, quite a bit more, both Unity and Unreal Engine also now support Linux. So those are just some of the updates that have come to our developer offerings, but how you access those has also changed in recent months as well. So I wanted to take just a little bit of time to actually kind of set out exactly what developer offerings we have and how you access those. So to start with, anyone who wants to develop with ArcGIS, you obviously need the APIs, the SDKs, the guides, samples, documentation, and that's all accessible through the Esri developers site. And then your entry point into ArcGIS then comes into forms. If you are an organization that already has ArcGIS, then this is your entry point, whether that could be ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. Alongside that, though, we also have the new ArcGIS location platform, formerly named ArcGIS Platform. Now, this is a new option for allowing developers to access ArcGIS services, analysis, all of it separate to an ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. So those are kind of the access points. Well, why am I including this on this update? What has actually changed? Well, earlier in June this year, ArcGIS developer subscription plans were deprecated. Now, that's at the builder, professional, premium, and enterprise levels. Now, the reason for this was to then streamline and simplify those developer offerings, as I showed in the previous slide. So that now means that all subscription accounts can be migrated to this new ArcGIS location platform. And as well as that functionality as well, if required, on top of that, you can add the ArcGIS developer bundle, which for those who maybe used ArcGIS developer subscription enterprise plan, it provides a very similar access into our software. So that is a very quick update of some of the headline news, which we won't be featuring later on. Of course, we've got a huge amount of other updates that we're going to be showcasing in just a minute. But before that, I'm going to hand over to Mark, our Chief Technology Officer. He's going to reflect on really where the focus of our technology has been this year, and also maybe a quick look into the focus of where we may be going in 2025. So over to you, Mark.
Great, thanks very much, Claudia. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. I don't know about you, but for me, this year's really flown by, particularly this term, actually. Since the summer, it's been an action-packed few months. There have been some great events and different activities going on. And when I look back, really throughout this year, one of my highlights has definitely been getting out to spend more time with you, with more organizations than I've ever done before, seeing the work that you do, whether that's perhaps through a session at one of our conferences or maybe meeting at one of the wider industry events that I've been to, or spending time focused with your team in an office, looking at the problems that you're trying to solve and understanding more about how you're doing that with ArcGIS. And you know what, that process I found really genuinely inspiring and actually quite humbling as I look back through the year, because at Esri we make this incredible technology. It can do amazing things, but really our job is to get that into the hands of people who can put it to use. And I continue to be inspired by the wide variety of industries, sectors and applications that we have the privilege of working with. And really it's you and it's your work that brings that to life. You're the people who are solving some of the world's biggest problems with geospatial approaches, and that really makes our work worthwhile. So thank you for that. And as I reviewed 2024 and I look back through the year, one of the things I did was I looked back to this session that we ran 12 months ago, this winter webinar. And one of the things that I spoke about then was the nature of professional GIS changing. And the fact that this was going to be one of our big focuses in 2024, harnessing this power that we now have with the advent of WebGIS, the enhancements of hardware and browser technology, the fact that we've increasingly been able to bring professional capabilities to the web. That was a big focus for us this year, and that's what we talked about 12 months ago. And actually, we've done a lot of that this year. Well, one thing we did actually that was quite important was we stood back and we took a hard look at our licensing. And we really said, if we're going to continue to do this, we need simpler ways of providing access to all of these capabilities. And that was very much in collaboration with you and with your feedback. And so what we did was, let me just briefly share my screen here. We launched these 6, or we consolidated to these 6 user types. We simplified access to ArcGIS to these 6 different roles. And what we did was we bundled in as much capability as we could into that. We removed add-ons, we removed extensions, we removed separate licensing wherever we could, and we bundled it all into these 6 levels. So we moved away from licensing individual products, instead focusing on enabling individuals with apps and capabilities all wrapped into these user types. Now, not only is that simpler to understand, but I think another reason it's important is that professional GIS today doesn't just mean ArcGIS Pro, and that's what we were talking about 12 months ago. Today you can do a huge variety of professional GIS work in ArcGIS Online, and in fact, many organizations, when I look back through the year that I've worked with this year, are using ArcGIS Online as their primary, or in many cases their sole GIS system today. And that shows how far we've come with SAS and with WebGIS. So we've been focusing on expanding these SAS capabilities. Some examples of that are, over the last 12 months, we've brought data pipelines into release version to simplify how you ingest and you integrate data and build connectivity with data through the system. Later today, Sasha's going to talk to us about Model Builder for geoprocessing on the web, again, bringing this incredibly powerful tool set for the first time to WebGIS. We've been making these rich capabilities increasingly available to you in workflows that are more accessible and simpler to use. So why are we doing that? Well, firstly, I hope that more accessible and simpler to use sounds like a good thing in and of itself, right? But there's actually more to it than that. I think the browser is a really, really important leveler. Because if you have an internet connection, the chances are you have a browser as well, right? So if we make things simple enough to use through a browser, that means that we're opening up access to pretty much anybody. So this is about simplifying access to geospatial techniques and making them available to a wider variety of people. And there's another reason as well, because if we can harness these modern approaches that I spoke about, if we can take advantage of browser technologies, harness GPUs on the client side, we can make things perform really, really well. And if it's easier to use and then it performs really, really well, for you that equals increasing productivity, helping you to do more, helping you to do those things more efficiently. So as I look forward, having looked back through 2024, as I look forward through 2025 and beyond, really that is the future direction that we're taking with ArcGIS. We are simplifying access to our technology and we're introducing new capabilities, and much of that is about expanding productivity and helping you to do more. Now, one area that we've been exploring these 2 themes is by introducing AI assistance across a range of different applications within ArcGIS. And if we can ask an AI assistant a question in natural language, then there's a simpler interface to access ArcGIS capabilities. And what that means is more people can benefit from it. But also, if you ask an AI assistant to do a load of stuff for you, that's a productivity win for whoever is driving those workflows as well. So we're putting a lot of work into this, and actually this area is going to be an ongoing beta program for some time to come. But let me give you an early view, and this is pre-beta, this application, so this is not yet in a beta program, but let me give you an early view of how some of this might work in ArcGIS Online. So here I've got storm overflow data that I found in the Living Atlas. This is provided by the Rivers Trust and maintained by them. This is looking at all the sewer spills and the storm overflows that we had throughout England and Wales in 2023. And actually, as I pan and I zoom around this map, what it seems to me is that there's an awful lot going on. It feels like everything is happening everywhere all at the same time, but obviously that isn't going to be the case. So I'm going to ask an AI assistant to help me explore this data. And the first thing that I could say that I might want to do is, one way that I could understand this data better is to find out where spills are happening most often. So I could ask the AI assistant, show me a map of the number of spills styled by size. And the AI is going to go away, and if you notice, I've just asked it to give me a map of the number of spills, but what it's done is it's identified and understood what I've meant by that. It's gone through my data and it's found this field called counted spills, and it's inferred that that is probably going to tell me information that I'm asking for. So I've not asked for a specific field, but it's managed to identify that. And then what it's done is it's driven the smart mapping tools to, in a way that I would have driven them as a human, to build me this map. And it's not perfect, actually. It doesn't really tell me an awful lot about what's going on. It doesn't look as good as I hoped, but because it's driven the tools like I would have driven them, I can jump in and start to customize and change what's going on. So I can maybe augment the smart mapping control here, and suddenly patterns start to emerge. I can get rid of the features with no values, which will just clean up my data a little bit. And suddenly I can see, actually, there is a pattern here. There's an awful lot of stuff going on over on the west side of the country. But as I was doing this, I thought, well, do you know what? It might not just be about the number of spills, but it could be that there are some spills, not very frequently, but that are very long in duration. So actually, maybe I want to know about the longest spills. So show me a heat map of the longest spills. And this is why you see it's not released yet, because sometimes it doesn't do what I want it to. So if I regenerate this, we can have a look at this heat map, and you can see the same pattern is emerging on the west of the country, but we can also see this hotspot that's coming in kind of the center of the north of the country as well. So that might be something I want to explore, not about the number, but also about the duration, the length of time that these strains are spilling for. So how about I explore that then? Tell me about the relationship between counted spills and total duration of spills. And the AI assistant's going to go away now, and it's produced me a bivariate map, right? So it's realized that I'm trying to contrast two different things. It's gone away and found those two different fields from my natural language, and then it's produced me a symbology in this matrix grid, which allows me to explore how these two different fields are connected. And obviously there's an awful lot going on here, which I might want to do additional analysis and look further into. But the point here is really that it's an example of how we can use natural language queries into ArcGIS to make it more accessible to more people. Just asking simple questions, but they could be driving quite complex capabilities behind the scenes. But with simple natural language, I can take advantage of that as a layman, but I can also harness that for more productivity and to help me to do more, even if I could have driven those tools myself. So as we look to 2025, these are going to continue to be some of our focus areas: simplifying access to ArcGIS, making it easier to use, broadening use, and expanding productivity, helping you to do more. And of course, that includes efficiency, but also new capabilities that expand what you can actually do as well. So that is all from me. I wish you a very happy Christmas, have a great break, and see you in 2025. Back to you, Claudia.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mark. It's really exciting to start to see where we're going already in 2024, but also looking ahead to 2025. So thank you very much, Mark. We've had quite a few questions come in around the user types you spoke about at the start. So if you have a look on Slido and have a look to see if you want to submit a question or upvote questions already existing. As I said, we'll answer the most upvoted in the follow-up email. So please do submit your questions. And as I said, we'll get to those most upvoted. So make use of that upvote feature. Brilliant. So next up, we've got Ben. Ben's going to take us through what's new in ArcGIS Pro 3.4. So are you there, Ben?
I am, yeah. Sorry for the millions of screens there. Hi, everyone. Now I'm going to run through some of what's new in the ArcGIS Pro 3.4 update, which we saw released last month. So, as with most Pro releases, this update has covered a lot from things like administrative changes, new cartography and geoprocessing capabilities, UI and performance enhancements. The list goes on really. But I think one thing that's really worth highlighting is that there were more than 70 user-generated ideas implemented in this update. So this really shows that Esri does have a very active process and community for generating and capturing and implementing user-led ideas. And it shows how much of a driving force these ideas are in these updates. So if you do want to help shape the future of Esri products, I do really encourage you to head over to the ArcGIS Ideas community, submit ideas for things you want to see or update any that you see on there as well. Upvote. So before I get into any of the key capabilities, I'm just going to cover a couple of key administration updates that we've seen. So first of all, Pro 3.4 has seen added flexibility around offline licensing. So now administrators can actually set the number of days that users can take their license offline for, whereas prior to this, it used to just be for the entire subscription length. Next, we have the introduction of version-specific patch notifications. So we understand that a lot of you, for whatever reason, might sit on a previous version of Pro. It's been a very functionally mature product for a while now, and so you might have everything you need in the previous version. And as a result, you might turn off update notifications. Now, unfortunately, this might lead you to missing out on things like important patch updates or bug fixes. So now, actually, administrators can set patch notifications in a way in which is version-specific. So this means you can make sure you get those latest quality improvements without necessarily having to be on the latest version of Pro. Now, lastly, is the removal for the license manager requirement with Enterprise 11.4. Now, this is something which Amy is going to talk a little bit more about later on, but essentially everything, the user types can now just be provisioned to the portal and everything managed there. So now we've covered some of the key administration updates. I'm just going to head over to my Pro and show you some of the new capabilities. So the keen eye amongst you will probably notice right away that my layout is looking a little bit different. And that's because we have some added flexibility and added options with the way in which we lay out our ribbon across the top here. And that is with the introduction of a simplified look that we have, which is really quite nice in being able to save a lot of space on your screen, particularly if you do know your way around Pro as it is. It could be quite a nice option. So to access that, you'd click this little drop down here, which is the ribbon display options, and then you can choose simplified ribbon. For now, though, I am just going to change it back to classic mode so everyone can kind of follow along a little bit easier. Now here on my map, I have data for wind farm site locations across Cumbria. Now, a really common step in a lot of workflows, particularly when working with multiple sites, would be to create and make use of definition queries. In fact, one of the most popular ideas that we had on the ArcGIS Ideas community was for there to be a tool which enables you to generate a definition query from a selection. Now, as we have delivered this update, so let's take a look at that in action. So let's say I want to take these 3 sites here and create a definition query from them. I'd head to my select tool. You can also select by attributes or location. And then I'm going to select these 3 sites here. Then I'm going to head over and open up the generate definition query from selection tool. So for this demo, I am just using the command search bar here, but you could also find it through the geoprocessing toolbox. For my input table, I'm going to choose Cumbria Wind Farms. And I'm going to make sure that these use selected records toggle is turned on here. For the query name, I am just going to keep it the same, but obviously you can name it whatever you want and then hit run. Now, once this tool has ran, the query will be created and then it will automatically be applied. So you can see all the other sites kind of disappear off the map here. And then if I head over to the data tab for my feature layer here, I can then see all the queries along with that new query that I've generated in this dropdown, which I can then switch between. If you wanted to edit that query that you've generated, you can then go into the layer properties, and then you can edit it as you would any other definition query as well. So let's say you have a unique symbology type like I do here for all of my wind farm sites. And instead of generating a definition query, you just kind of wanted to toggle the visibility of each site location. Traditionally, you'd go into your symbology pane, and then you would toggle the visibility using these checkboxes here. Now, this could get a little bit tedious if you do have to keep going back and forth into your symbology pane. However, now in Pro 3.4, you can have those checkboxes appear in your contents pane instead. So to do that, you'd click this More button, and then you can choose Use Contents pane for class visibility, and then you can check them here. So it is quite a small change, but I think it's going to make a big difference in a lot of workflows, especially mine as well. So whilst we're on the topic of symbology, there has been a new cartography tool introduced into ArcGIS Pro 3.4, and that is this Calculate Color Theorem field tool. So to show you that in action, I'm going to turn on my Cumbria wards layer that I have here. Now let's say with this wards layer, I wanted to symbolize each ward in a way which is really easy to sort of tell them apart. Now the Calculate Color Theorem field tool will apply the full color theorem such that no two adjacent polygons will be symbolized by the same color. So to do that, I'll go into my input features, choose Cumbria wards, field name. I would create a new field. So this does generate a new field in your attribute table. So let's call it color. And then you'd hit run. Now I have already run this tool. So instead I'm going to head over into the attribute table here and show you what it looks like instead. So at the right here, you can see it's generated a new field. Again, it's applied a number to each feature such that no two features that are adjacent to each other have the same number. So then if I go into my symbology pane, I can then go to unique values, and then I can select my new color field, and it applies the theorem. Again, it's a really nice symbology effect, which makes it really easy to see these wards and separate them apart. Now, another quite big update, which is particularly relevant for those under the PGSA, is that you can now access and make use of the OS-NGD Features API through ArcGIS Pro 3.4. And that's with the added flexibility, functionality, which enables you to limit the number of features returned by the API. So to do that, to connect to the API, you'd head over to your Insert, choose Connections, Server, New OGC API Server. And then you can fill out your URL and your API key into the fields here. Now, once the connection has been established, the server will appear in your catalog pane under the servers, OS-NGD API, and then you'll see all your features here. So things like buildings, ferry terminals, land types. So let's have a look and see how this works in action. So let's say that I wanted to return data for buildings in my visible extent here. I can head over to my API and I can choose, let's say, building V2, drag on the data, and then here I can either select the number of features returned either by a numerical value, or for this example, I'm going to choose spatial extent and select that as my current visible extent. Now, once I hit OK, it will add the data to my map. And as you can see, we have data for these buildings added. And if I zoom out, you can see that it has only returned those features within that visible extent as well. So this is quite transformational in enabling you to access the most up-to-date OS data in a way which is really lightweight and accessible. There is a really useful story map that we have, which goes into a bit more detail as to what these APIs are and how they work. And I'll make sure that gets shared after this webinar as part of the resources. Now, if I head over to my scene here, we do have some updates to our flood simulator tool. So here I have a pre-authored flood layer in my contents pane. And if I go into the simulation tab and into the configuration bar, you can see right away what the dimensions for the simulation are, along with the resolution and cell size. If I head over to the properties in the top left here, you now actually have the option to adjust some of these values. So in Pro 3.3, the default would be for the simulation to run at a 4K resolution. But now if you have a bit of a better graphics card, you can then run it at 8K, or if you think that's too much, you can then drop that down to 2K. Similarly, you can now adjust the precision in which the elevation values are drawn at. So again, if you have a bit of a better computer and you want to have a more precise simulation, run it at maybe a smaller area of interest, you can drag this over to the more precise side. Again, in Pro 3.3, the default was for this to just run at fast as well. In terms of elements, we do have a new water element here, and that is the water area element. So this is similar to this water source element which we had in Pro 3.3, but rather than the water being attributed to a particular point, you can attribute it to an area or a polygon. So to add a water area, you can click on it, and then you can draw the water area like this, or you can import the geometry here by selecting a feature and then importing that geometry there. Now I have already created a water area for my flood simulation layer here for the Bay Area. And I'm going to hit run so we can see how this works. So first it's capturing my elevation values, and then the simulation will start. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can kind of see how it works. Now, while the simulation runs, there have also been some changes to your analysis results. And the key thing to note is that you can now actually export your results as a CRF file. So in 3.3, again, the default and the only way would be to export them as a series of timestamped TIFF files. However, you now have the option as a CRF, which makes it a little bit nicer when you do bring it back into Pro. You get a time slider and it brings it in as one file. Simulation runs here, you can slowly begin to see we're 1 minute into the simulation and the water area is starting to make its way up into the shore here. Now, unfortunately, obviously in the headlines, we are seeing a lot more flooding events. And so tools like Flood Simulator, it really enables you to capture the more compounding factors of flooding in a way which is really lightweight and accessible. Now, I'm just going to pause this here as this is all I have time for today. I'm going to head back over to my slides. So that is absolutely not everything. I really do encourage you to head over to the What's New in ArcGIS Pro 3.4 documentation to have a look at really what else there is out there. Again, after this webinar, I'll make sure that that story map that I was on about, the OS NGD API story map, will get shared as well, so you have that information at the ready. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to pass you on back to Claudia.
Thank you very much, Ben. You managed to cover quite a lot of the key updates there in ArcGIS Pro 3.4, but as you say, there definitely is a lot more. And I think the flooding tool you showcased there towards the end is particularly powerful. So thank you so much, Ben. Next up, we've got Madeline, who's going to be giving us a Living Atlas 2024 roundup. Over to you, Madeline.
Thanks, Claudia. I hope you can hear me and see everything okay.
Yes, all good.
Perfect. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. So I'm just going to be spending the next 5 minutes providing a bit of a 2024 roundup of the Living Atlas. So highlighting what's new, what's coming soon, and then an exciting customer spotlight. So I thought I'd begin with just some key metrics for this year. So within the UK, we now have 494 layers across 33 organisations. Back in June, our total views were about 77 million, and we are now upwards of 93 million. So the use of the Living Atlas is constantly increasing, and I would therefore like to thank all of you, our customers, who contribute data to share with the global community. And on the screen now are some of our most popular items in the UK. So the GB base maps are our most popular layers, followed by the live stream gauges layer and our triple SIs for England. So I've just got an example of one of these on the screen now of Portsmouth Harbour. Now on to some new and notable layers. So a real highlight of the year was actually releasing weather data to the Living Atlas. So we added the precipitation forecast back in August, and it provides a forecast for all of the rain, snow and sleet for the next 72 hours. The data is taken from NOAA and is updated every 6 hours and just gives you a whole new world of possibilities. You could create animations such as the one on the screen now, and through to helping local authorities or our transport customers to prepare for their responses to potentially extreme weather events. This year, we also released the British National Grid Terrain 3D elevation layer. This enhances your 3D data and experiences in ArcGIS Online. It allows you for the first time to use the Esri UK's open base maps within a 3D scene. Secondly, it allows you to display 3D data with BNG coordinates, so no longer requirement for reprojection, which really saves you time in your workflows. Lastly, you can leverage the improved resolution when compared to the existing World Terrain service to again just provide you with more detail to your web scenes. And in the new year, our next step is to add the tiling schema for this to the Living Atlas. Now, another new feature is actually provided by Esri Inc., and this is the Landsat Explorer app. The app enables you to investigate and unlock the wealth of information that Landsat provides. The app offers key capabilities such as visual exploration of the best available Landsat scenes. So the app is on the screen now, and although it's very US-centric, you can easily click and explore some notable regions, and there's just so many things that you can go in and have a look at within this app. You can also look at on-the-fly multispectral band combinations for visualization and analysis, and the ability to look at change over time with the swipe tools. So yeah, this is just a really valuable resource that I encourage you to go and explore. Next up is our customer spotlight. So I'd like to make a particular shout out to WWT, who are the newest customer to be nominating data to the Living Atlas. Now, WWT are calling for the creation of 100,000 hectares of new and restored wetlands in the UK by 2050. And to aid this, WWT have created some wetland potential maps, which highlight areas across the UK that would benefit from wetland creation or restoration. They've provided this data to the Living Atlas, so we have data sets such as wetlands for carbon storage and wetlands for urban well-being. And the aim was to identify places where restored or newly created wetlands could have the maximum impact. So yeah, again, just I'd encourage you to go and explore these layers, and thank you again to WWT for sharing this data. Lastly, we have some exciting news in that we are very soon, hopefully before the new year, going to be releasing the new UK Living Atlas hub site. You'll be able to access this through the Esri UK website for the first time. And here you can explore some of the data available within the Living Atlas, have a look at our featured content for all our exciting additions and to keep up to date with what's new and what's going on, and also find out on how to contribute and nominate your data to the Living Atlas. So yeah, if you do have any data that you think would be of benefit, then please do consider nominating these layers. So yeah, that brings me to the end of this presentation. If you would like to know any more about the Living Atlas or have any specific questions, then please reach out to the email on the screen now. But yeah, Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Madeline. It's great to see the latest features that have come. And as you say, there's always new things being added. So definitely encourage everyone to keep an eye out and just keep playing around with these new layers being added. So thank you very much, Madeline. Straight on to the next update. It's another one of our kind of large updates in the last few weeks. So Amy Palmer is here to introduce what's new in ArcGIS Enterprise 11.4.
Thank you, Claudia. So hello all, and my name is Amy Palmer, and I am here at the ArcGIS update today to talk to you about what's new in ArcGIS Enterprise at the latest 11.4 version. And this was recently released last month for Windows and Linux, and also this week on Kubernetes. So 11.4 is the latest short-term release of ArcGIS Enterprise, and that means that this release will have support for 18 months of patching and technical support, then an additional 18 months of technical support only. Now, before I jump into the new features and product highlights at this version, there are a number of retirement and deprecation notices to be aware of when upgrading to version 11.4. ArcGIS Geoanalytics Server is now retired. The tile cache data store is now deprecated and is to be replaced by the object store, and we're going to touch upon that a bit more in a moment. Microsoft has deprecated Bing Maps for Enterprise, and this will be replaced by Azure Maps in the future. Map Viewer Classic is now deprecated, as well as ArcGIS Configurable Apps and Web App Builder. There are lots of new features in 11.4, and my first key product highlight is the arrival of ArcGIS Web Editor without any additional installation. ArcGIS Web Editor is a web application designed to make editing GIS data quicker and more seamless. It offers an easy-to-use interface and tools tailored to various editing workflows. And you can also now, at 11.4, leverage ArcGIS Web Editor directly from the app launcher in the ArcGIS Enterprise portal. And the creator, user type, and above provides access to this app. Next up is the ability to now update the portal's public URL at 11.4. Has your organization ever thought about undergoing a name change and you've wondered how this may impact your enterprise URLs? Maybe a rebrand or a merge with another business? Or has your enterprise been configured against best practice with maybe hard-written machine names on these public URLs? Well, in the past, it has been challenging to update your enterprise portal URL to reflect a new name. But ArcGIS Enterprise 11.4 introduces new APIs that allow administrators to update the public-facing URL for your enterprise portal. Now, modifying the domain, subdomain, context, or any combination of these URL components will be supported using the new tools available. It's worth noting that not everything can be updated using these tools, and manual steps are still required and mentioned in the new documentation that is also now available. ArcGIS Pro users will need to update their portal connections to the new URL. Existing collaborations will need to be recreated, and also organizations configured with SAML would need an updated metadata file. And server certificates would need to be updated to reflect these new changes as a couple of examples. Next up, we have item classification as an exciting new functionality at 11.4. Do you have items you need to classify in order to denote the level of sensitivity associated with that item? An example may be that an organization needs to classify items that can only be accessed by individuals with a particular security clearance level, classifying items to confirm with laws or regulations related to privacy, legal proceedings, or the timing of information releases. At 11.4, you can opt in to applying a unique and customizable classification schema for your organization, and you can classify items based on that schema. These unique classification schemas will support adding appropriate classification and labels to items within the portal, making and marking all current and new items with a classification after this has been set. Assigning a classification schema to your organization requires a valid classification schema outlined in a JSON file. You can create a classification schema or download a sample schema from the ArcGIS classification GitHub repository. Once you have a classification schema JSON file, you can assign the classification schema through the portal website. Next up, we have audit logging, and this is new at 11.4, where organizations may need the ability to audit their business systems in order to reconstruct past events. Since audit logging is recognized as a critical new capability, this feature is always enabled and cannot be turned off. Logs are stored as files within the portal logs folder, and they record actions related to user, role, group, and item management. More actions to the audit logs will be added in future releases, and you can use these logs for monitoring, analyzing, and reporting. There are many open source and commercial products that specialize in managing and analyzing these audit logs, and these logs can be ingested in real time to search for specific events of interest over time. The default location for the audit logs is in the ArcGIS portal directory, where logs are currently stored. A new audit folder is now available in that location, and you can change the location of this audit log location using the portal admin directory. Moving on at 11.4, there is an update to the definition of a base deployment of ArcGIS Enterprise. So in ArcGIS Enterprise 11.3 and earlier, a base deployment was defined as portal for ArcGIS, ArcGIS Server, ArcGIS Web Adapter, and ArcGIS Data Store, configured as a relational and tile cache data store. In 11.4, the tile cache data store is deprecated, and functionality is being replaced by the object store. Existing hosting scene layers will continue to work, but new hosted scene layers will require ArcGIS Enterprise to have ArcGIS Data Store configured as object store. For customers deploying Enterprise in AWS or Microsoft Azure, there is another option to use a cloud storage service as the object store instead of using the ArcGIS Data Store configured for object. ArcGIS server tools are available to help you migrate hosted scene layer caches to the object store. And so at 11.4, a base deployment is now defined as portal for ArcGIS, ArcGIS Server, ArcGIS Web Adapter, ArcGIS Data Store, and with ArcGIS Data Store configured for relational and an object store. Lastly, we have licensing management changes in Enterprise 11.4, as my colleague Ben mentioned earlier. The ArcGIS License Manager will no longer be required for named user licensing of ArcGIS Pro, as well as ArcGIS Drone to Map and ArcGIS All Source starting at this version. Instead, license management will now be supported through the Enterprise portal instead of the License Manager. The portal you specify to manage licenses will now be known as the Licensing Portal, and ArcGIS Pro connects to this portal to obtain licensing information for members of your organization. I hope you found this update insightful on what's new at 11.4. This was a quick overview of the major updates at this release that I have chosen to mention, but there are lots of new smaller updates to each application that you can read further about in the Esri blogs and 11.4 documentation. Thank you all very much, and back to you, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Amy. Quite a lot of administration changes there with Enterprise 11.4, so thank you for kind of really clearly taking us through all of those. Next up and last up, but by no means least, we have Sasha, and she's going to be taking us through what's new in the latest ArcGIS Online update. So over to you, Sasha.
Thank you, Claudia. So hi everyone, thank you for the introduction, Claudia, and let's jump in to some updates in ArcGIS Online. So first off, as I'm sure most of you know, there are many products across the ArcGIS Online system, and unfortunately today I don't have the time to take you through the updates across all of them, but I am going to be taking you through the updates across these key products shown on the screen. Now, if you are looking for a more in-depth overview of these updates, then I encourage you to check out the blogs and documentation that will be linked in this slide and shared with you after the webinar. So first up, jumping straight in, we've got some new features added to Map Viewer, and one of those is the new Embed Map feature. Now, this provides a simplified map sharing experience so that sharing your maps is now as easy as copying and pasting an HTML. We can also now calculate fields with structured query language as well as Arcade. And we can preview these calculations before running them to ensure we're obtaining the desired result and also save scripts for future use. We also, of course, as Mark mentioned, have the release of Model Builder into ArcGIS Online in its public beta. Now, this is really exciting because Model Builder allows us to streamline repetitive tasks and enhance the reproducibility of our workflows. And with Model Builder in ArcGIS Online, you can access over 20 different analysis tools from a searchable menu and also living atlas layers as model inputs. But first off, for those of you who may not know about Model Builder is essentially an interactive canvas which allows users to create, edit, and run workflows of geoprocessing tools and models. And this is really exciting because Model Builder has only been accessible in ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro until now. Now, those of you that are familiar with data pipelines might be looking at this graphic and wondering what the difference is, as they look quite similar. The main difference is that Model Builder is used to automate analysis workflows, while data pipelines is used to automate data integration and preparation workflows. And because of this, Model Builder uses analysis tools, while data pipelines uses tools focused on cleaning, formatting, and preparing third-party data. And we'll come back to data pipelines in a minute. In terms of credits, Model Builder charges credits according to the duration of your session, and you must connect a session in order to edit and view your models. You'll also be given an estimation of the amount of credits that you'll use in a session, and there is no extra charge for running tools inside your models. It's important to note that you cannot currently schedule models or share your models between ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro with this release. Now I'm going to jump into Model Builder and give you a quick demo of how it works. So as you can see here, I've got a wintry wonderland map of the UK, and all of these snowmen across my map are representing cities. Now, my aim with Model Builder today is to extract cities that are in the Scotland polygon shown in red, and also create a buffer around these cities of 50 kilometers. Now, to find Model Builder, you're going to head down to the right and click Analysis, and then you'll click Model Builder here. Now, I have already connected my session to save time, but this doesn't take very long, and you will need to connect your session in order to view and run your models. So I'm going to give that a name and save my model, and then you'll see that the interactive canvas I was talking about will appear. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is head over to my Add Data tab on the side, and I'm going to add layers from my map as I already have all the data that I need. So as I add in my inputs, you can see they will appear on my canvas, and this is fully interactive. You can move these around to make your workflow a little bit easier. I'm then going to add my first tool, and this is going to be the overlay tool, as I'm looking to find out which cities overlay with my Scotland polygon. Now when this tool appears, it will automatically appear with an output as well. And you can see that these are grayed out, which suggests that there's something I need to do and some connecting in order to get this model to run. So I'm going to connect up my arrows, put them as input and overlay, and then when I'm ready, my tool will turn yellow. Now in here, I can edit my tool parameters. I'm happy with my overlay type to be intersect. And in my results layer, this is where I could create a hosted feature layer. But at this stage, I'm happy to create an intermediate data layer. And that's the great thing about Model Builder. You can chain up intermediate data layers with tools without creating a hosted feature layer every time. So next, I'm going to add my next tool, and that's going to be the buffer tool. So again, this tool will appear with an output automatically, and I'm going to link up my intermediate data layer with my next tool. I'm then going to go into my tool parameters, and I can see that I need to set my distance value to 50. I'm happy with the units to be kilometers, and I'm happy with my overlap policy. And at this stage, this is where I might go and create a hosted feature layer. But at the moment, I'm happy to create another data layer, intermediate layer, as I have already run this model. And when I run this model, you can see that I would be presented with these cities and these buffers as well. Now, do remember to disconnect your sessions because you don't want to be using unnecessary credits. Next up, we've got some new features in ArcGIS data pipelines. Now, those of you that know pipelines will probably be pleased to hear that we now have the addition of pipeline notes. Now, this allows you to document your workflows and add notes to your pipelines. And this is really useful for reminding yourself of your exact workflow pattern or tool function, or even provide context for others who might be sharing your pipelines. We also have two new tools to help with streamlining our data management within ArcGIS data pipelines. And those are the pivot tool, which allows users to convert long tabular data sets to wide data sets, and also the dissolve tool, which enables users to combine intersecting polygons, polylines, or remove boundaries and aggregate features as shown in this graphic here. We also have some exciting new updates to Scene Viewer, and the first of those is that analysis tools are now available. And this is great because it means that we can perform our spatial analysis tasks without having to switch in and out of our 3D interface. We also now have the ability to perform interactive viewshed analysis, which reduces the number of tools needed to immediately determine visible areas from a specific location. And this is fully customizable. Users can adjust the height, location, direction, or distance of the viewer from the scene they're trying to show. We can also now create empty 3D object scene layers and populate these layers either with features inside Scene Viewer or by uploading 3D models directly. Next up, we've got some new features updated in Instant Apps. And if you're new to Instant Apps, a useful new feature is the Getting Started tab, which can be found in the Instant Apps home under the Learn More button. And this gives you a guide of where to go and a step-by-step process to building your Instant App. We also have the addition of Oriented Imagery Viewer, which allows users to visualize and explore imagery taken from different perspectives. Now, this will also be supported by Scene Viewer as well. We also have 3 new app templates which have made their way out of beta this November. We've got the Compare template, which allows you to compare multiple maps or scenes in different layouts, and these can be synchronized or you can set them to move independently. We also have the Observer template, which allows you to explore 3D scene layers with various time and attribute filters, and the Streamflow View template, which allows you to explore Streamflow forecasts and animate these changes over time. And this template also includes 2 Streamflow services as well. Next up, we've got some new features in ArcGIS dashboards, and one of those is the new Measure tool. And this allows us to calculate both area and distance between points in our dashboards within both 2D and 3D environments. We can also now enable date axis guides, and these allow us to highlight key dates within our serial charts and provide additional context to our data and help viewers interpret our data quickly and effectively with a hovering box of text, as you can see here. Now, in order to do this, you do need to make sure that your past dates toggle is enabled within the data settings of your serial chart. Now, last up, we've got some very exciting additions to ArcGIS Experience Builder. And one of those is our 4 new templates, Edifice, Recap, Skyline, and Vista, which are now in the full version of Experience Builder. And as I'm sure many of you are eager to hear about, we have the new Express mode. Now, Express mode simplifies the user app building experience by encouraging users to follow a streamlined step-by-step process to designing an app or experience. Now, this is also a great transition for those of you who are still using ArcGIS Web App Builder, as this is scheduled for retirement in 2026. Now, I'm going to move over to Express mode and give you a quick demo of how that works. So here I am in my normal Experience Builder interface, and you can see if I go to the top here, I can click the toggle that says go to Express mode. You'll notice in Express mode that all of the steps that you're going to need to take will be highlighted in this purple blue color. You can see here that I'm presented with a series of templates, which might look familiar to some of you who use Web App Builder, and that's in order to support the migration. You can see on the right here that the next step that I'm expected to do is select a map, which is highlighted in the same color. I would then go to add new data, and I'm just going to select a map that I made earlier this month. And once that's gone into my setting, I can add that to my experience with this blue button here. With Express mode, the content and features are now focused on the essential ones. So we now have the ability to change my initial view or add in some tools such as a compass, a locate button, or even an extend navigate toggle, which will appear on the left-hand side here. The next thing to note is my empty widget panel up here, which when I click it, you'll see that a plus button will appear at the top of my page. And when I select that, I have the opportunity to add in lots of different widgets, which again, just help me streamline that process of building my experience. If you do realize, however, halfway through an Express mode experience builder that you want to switch back into the full mode as you need a bit more enhanced content, you can click the 3 buttons at the top here and click switch back to full mode. Now, if I was to continue with this experience, I might end up with something like this, where I can add in base map galleries, different bookmarks to take me to different parts of my map, cards for more information, or legends. And as you can see, this is a really streamlined process of building my experience, and I'd encourage you all to give it a go. That's it from me, so I'm going to hand back to Claudia, and I hope you found some of that information useful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sasha. Certainly a really busy ArcGIS Online update, so thank you for taking us through some of those new features and capabilities. Firstly, just apologies if some people experience some technical issues throughout that presentation. We will have the recording in the follow-up email, which will include the complete recording from today's session, because I know some of you might have experienced some looping of the previous one, but you can see the full, as I said, the full recording in the follow-up. So really just a thank you to all presenters as well today. Hopefully this has been a nice walkthrough of just some of the key capabilities and updates that have made their way to ArcGIS in recent months. And that these ArcGIS updates throughout the year as well have been a nice way for you to keep up to date with ArcGIS. The only other thing really to say is thank you for joining us this year for this entire webinar series. We've really enjoyed sharing our insights with a range of different ArcGIS products across each month that we've been delivering these webinars. And excitingly, we will be back next year, but as you may see on screen, it's with a new look and a new name called GIS Live. So this is exactly the same purpose as we've been delivering to you this year, to keep you up to date, to showcase some capabilities of different products across ArcGIS, and we will still have these ArcGIS update webinars throughout the year as well. So the reason really for calling this GIS Live is to bring all of our resources that we create for you to help keep you up to date under the one name GIST. So that's the GIS Live for our webinars and the GIS News for the newsletter. And there'll be a link in the follow-up email to help you to have a look at the new GIS landing page that we've got, and you can see details there for how to sign up, both for the newsletter and our next webinar, which, as I said, we are back in 2025 with our first webinar in January being effectively managing your ArcGIS Online account. So please do join us again in January. So again, really just thank you so much for joining us today. Happy holidays as well from us at Esri UK, and we're excited to see you again in 2025. Thank you very much, everyone.